In the vast expanse of space far beyond what any human eye could see, there existed a civilization known as the Vorthak. The Vorthak were an ancient and powerful race, their empire stretching across countless star systems. They ruled over a council called the Hegemony, which governed millions of planets and species. To them, every living thing in the universe fell into one of two categories: prey or pests. Prey species were those that could be used, either for labor, resources, or assimilation into their empire. Pests, on the other hand, were considered too weak or useless to bother with, and were often wiped out without hesitation. For centuries, the Vorthak had traveled through galaxies, conquering worlds and classifying life forms they encountered along the way. It was a system that worked well for them, allowing them to expand their dominance effortlessly. But everything changed when a scout ship returned from a distant planet called Earth. The scout ship landed gently on the surface of Zerath, the central hub of the Vorthak Empire. A young female officer named Ava Carter stepped off the vessel, her face pale but determined. She walked briskly toward the council chamber where the leaders of the hegemony awaited her report. As she entered the grand hall, her boots clicked softly against the polished black floor. The room was filled with towering figures cloaked in shimmering robes, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. At the center of the chamber stood Kael Draven, one of the oldest and most respected members of the council. Ava took a deep breath before speaking. "Council," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "I have encountered a new species during my reconnaissance mission. They call themselves humans." The council members exchanged glances, some leaning forward with curiosity, while others remained indifferent. Humans were not entirely unknown to the Vorthak. They had been mentioned briefly in earlier reports, but nothing substantial had ever come of it. Most assumed they were just another primitive species unworthy of attention. "Describe them," Kael said, his tone calm yet commanding. His presence demanded respect, even among his peers. "They are different," Ava replied cautiously. "Physically, they appear fragile compared to us. Their technology is rudimentary at best. Yet there is something about them that feels unpredictable. During my observation, I witnessed acts of aggression, cooperation, creativity, all within a single day. They seem capable of adapting quickly to challenges, almost instinctively." Kael raised an eyebrow. "Adaptability is common among prey species. What makes these humans unique?" Ava hesitated, choosing her next words carefully. "It's not just adaptability. It's how they use it. For example, I observed one group constructing tools from scraps found in their environment. Another group devised complex strategies to hunt animals much larger than themselves. And then there's their social structure. It's chaotic, yes, but also highly cooperative. They fight among themselves constantly, yet when faced with an external threat, they unite with remarkable speed." Her words hung in the air, met with silence. Some council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure how to respond. Others dismissed her concerns outright, waving her observations away as irrelevant. Commander Isaac Hale, a burly male with sharp features, scoffed loudly. "You're telling me we should worry about a bunch of savages wielding sticks and stones? Ava, you've spent too long watching them. Let's send a fleet to Earth, gather samples, and move on. This will be no different from any other conquest." Kael frowned but said nothing. He had seen countless civilizations rise and fall under the hegemony's rule, each one predictable in its own way, but something about Ava's description gnawed at him. Unpredictable, chaotic, resilient. These were traits rarely seen in prey species. Despite his unease, the majority of the council agreed with Isaac's plan. A small fleet would be dispatched to Earth to assess the situation further. If humans truly pose no threat, they could be classified as prey and added to the hegemony's growing list of conquered worlds. If they proved troublesome, extermination would be swift and efficient. As the meeting adjourned, Kael lingered behind, staring thoughtfully at the holographic map of Earth displayed in the center of the chamber. Something told him this decision might come back to haunt them all. Meanwhile, on Earth, life continued as usual for most people. In a quiet Midwestern town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, Emily Dawson went about her daily routine. As the local sheriff, she was accustomed to dealing with minor disturbances, a stolen bicycle here, a noisy neighbor there. Nothing out of the ordinary ever seemed to happen in her sleepy little corner of the world. That changed one evening when Emily received a strange call from a farmer named Joe Miller. His voice trembled as he described seeing strange lights hovering over his fields late at night. "They weren't planes or drones, Sheriff," he insisted. "These things moved like nothing I've ever seen before." Curious but skeptical, Emily decided to investigate. She drove out to Joe's farm just after sunset, her patrol car kicking up dust along the dirt road. When she arrived, she found him pacing nervously near the edge of his property. Following his gaze, she squinted into the darkness. At first, she saw nothing unusual. Then, suddenly, a cluster of bright orbs appeared in the sky, hovering silently above the trees. Emily reached for her radio to call for backup, but before she could speak, the lights darted downward, disappearing behind the tree line. Her heart raced as she grabbed her flashlight and headed toward the woods, motioning for Joe to stay put. Pushing aside branches and stepping carefully over roots, she ventured deeper into the forest until she stumbled upon something that made her blood run cold. There, lying motionless in a clearing, was a man she recognized from town, Tom Harris, the owner of the local hardware store. His clothes were torn and his skin bore strange burn marks as if he'd been exposed to intense heat. Emily knelt beside him, checking for a pulse. Relief washed over her when she felt a faint beat beneath her fingertips. Before she could decide what to do next, a rustling sound came from the bushes nearby. Spinning around, she shone her flashlight into the shadows, expecting to see an animal. Instead, she froze as a pair of glowing eyes stared back at her. The creature stepped into the light, its form tall and insect-like, with elongated limbs and a sleek metallic exoskeleton. It tilted its head, studying her with an unsettling intelligence. Emily's instincts kicked in. She scrambled backward, fumbling for her gun. Before she could fire, the creature emitted a high-pitched screech and vanished into thin air, leaving only silence in its wake. Shaken but determined, Emily dragged Tom back to her car and sped toward the hospital. Along the way, she couldn't shake the image of those glowing eyes from her mind. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't natural, and it certainly wasn't friendly. Back at the station, Emily tried to file a report, but her superiors laughed off her claims. "Aliens? Really, Emily?" her boss chided. "Maybe you've been watching too many movies." Frustrated but unwilling to give up, Emily turned to Ryan Cole, a former soldier who now ran the town's mechanic shop. Ryan had always struck her as someone who could handle himself in tough situations, and she trusted his judgment. After hearing her story, he didn't mock her like everyone else. Instead, he nodded gravely. "We need to figure out what's going on," Ryan said. "If half of what you're saying is true, this isn't just some random incident. Someone, or something, is targeting our town." Together, they began piecing together clues, starting with the mysterious disappearance of several townsfolk over the past few weeks. Each case shared eerie similarities: unexplained lights in the sky, sudden silences in nature, and no trace of the missing persons left behind. Their investigation led them to the outskirts of town, where they discovered a crashed object partially buried in the ground. Upon closer inspection, they realized it wasn't man-made, it was alien. The realization hit them like a punch to the gut. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and whatever had arrived wasn't interested in making friends. Unbeknownst to Emily and Ryan, their actions were being watched, not just by the Vorthak fleet lurking in orbit above Earth, but also by forces within the hegemony itself. Forces that would soon learn humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The Vorthak fleet arrived in Earth's orbit with calculated precision. Commander Isaac Hale stood on the bridge of the lead ship, his sharp eyes scanning the holographic display that showed the blue-green planet below. To him, Earth looked like any other world they had conquered before. Beautiful, yes, but ultimately insignificant. He had no doubt that humanity would crumble under the might of the hegemony. "Begin limited ground operations," Isaac ordered, his voice firm and commanding. "Capture specimens for analysis. Avoid unnecessary destruction. We need to understand these creatures first." Ava Carter stood nearby, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She wanted to argue, to warn them again about how unpredictable humans were, but she knew it would be pointless. The council had already dismissed her. Concerns and Isaac's arrogance only reinforced their blind confidence. Still, a gnawing unease twisted in her gut as she watched the deployment orders being carried out. Down on Earth, Emily Dawson and Ryan Cole were piecing together fragments of what was happening. After discovering the alien drone in the woods, they had brought it back to Mia Torres, a college student who spent most of her time tinkering with electronics in her garage. Mia was skeptical at first. Alien sounded ridiculous, but when she saw the strange markings and advanced materials on the object, her skepticism turned into fascination. "This isn't human," Mia muttered, running her fingers over the smooth surface of the drone. "It's way beyond anything we've got, but..." She paused, tilting her head thoughtfully. "I think I can crack it. Give me some time." While Mia worked, Emily and Ryan focused on gathering more information. They visited families of the missing townsfolk, asking questions and looking for patterns. Every story seemed to point to the same thing: bright lights in the sky, eerie silence, and then nothing. It wasn't just their town either. Reports of similar incidents were popping up all over the country. One evening, while reviewing old news articles online, Ryan stumbled across something chilling. A grainy video showed a group of people being led onto a massive metallic ship by towering insect-like creatures. The footage was shaky and poorly lit, but there was no mistaking what it depicted: abduction. "We're not dealing with random disappearances," Ryan said, showing the video to Emily. "These things are taking people, and whoever made this video didn't survive long enough to share it widely." Emily felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "If they're abducting people, why? What do they want?" Ryan shook his head. "I don't know. But whatever it is, it can't be good." High above Earth, the Vorthak began their experiments. Dozens of humans had been captured during nighttime raids, snatched from their homes or workplaces without warning. The captives were transported to holding cells aboard the ships where scientists poked and prodded them with cold efficiency. At first, the humans cowered, overwhelmed by the sheer terror of their situation. Many cried, begged, or screamed, but none resisted, at least not at first. Then something unexpected happened. One man, a wiry factory worker named Greg, managed to loosen a bolt from the wall of his cell using a piece of broken metal he'd found lying around. With surprising ingenuity, he used the makeshift tool to pry open the lock on his door. When the guards arrived to investigate the noise, Greg lunged at them, wielding the bolt like a weapon. Though he was quickly subdued, his actions sparked something in the other prisoners. Inspired, or perhaps desperate, they began looking for ways to fight back. Some fashioned crude tools from scraps in their cells, while others communicated through taps on the walls, devising plans to escape. The Vorthak scientists were baffled. No prey species had ever shown such resourcefulness. Even when subjected to painful tests designed to break their will, the humans refused to give up. Instead, they adapted, finding loopholes in the procedures meant to control them. Some even managed to sabotage equipment, causing minor malfunctions throughout the ship. Word of these incidents reached Cale Draven, who had been monitoring the operation closely. When he heard about the escapes and acts of defiance, his suspicions deepened. Humans weren't behaving like prey. They were acting like survivors. "They're learning," Kyle murmured to himself, staring at the reports spread out before him. "Every test we throw at them, they find a way to counter it. This isn't natural behavior for a lesser species." He decided to pay a visit to the lab personally. When he arrived, he observed the humans through a one-way window. Most sat quietly, conserving their energy, but their eyes darted around constantly, analyzing every detail of their surroundings. Others whispered to each other in low tones, their faces etched with determination rather than fear. Cale turned to the lead scientist, a middle-aged Vorthak named Zoran. "What have you learned so far?" Zoran hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, under Kale's piercing gaze. Their biology is resilient. They heal quickly from injuries that would incapacitate most species. Their mental fortitude is also remarkable. Despite our efforts to break them, many remain defiant. And their adaptability, Kale pressed. That's the most troubling aspect, Zoran admitted. They seem capable of modifying their environment almost instinctively. We've caught several attempting to tamper with our equipment. If left unchecked, they could pose a serious threat. Kale nodded slowly. Continue your work, but exercise caution. These humans may not be as helpless as we assumed. Back on Earth, Mia finally cracked the alien drone. Late one night, she called Emily and Ryan to her garage, her face flushed with excitement. On her laptop screen, lines of code scrolled rapidly, interspersed with images and symbols unfamiliar to anyone on the planet. "I did it," Mia exclaimed. "Well, sort of. I can't translate everything yet, but I found maps. Coordinates, maybe? And there's mention of something called hegemony. Sounds like an empire or government." Emily leaned closer, her brow furrowed. "Can you track where these coordinates lead?" Mia nodded. "Yeah, but they're not on Earth. They're somewhere in space. Still, if we focus on the local data, we might be able to figure out where they're operating from here." Ryan rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "If we can locate one of their bases, we might be able to hit them back." The idea was risky, but Emily agreed it was worth a shot. Together, the trio pored over the decrypted files, piecing together clues. Eventually, they identified a pattern. The abductions always occurred near remote areas with dense forests or mountains. Using this information, they narrowed down potential landing sites for the alien ships. Armed with this knowledge, Emily and Ryan set out to gather evidence. They drove to a secluded valley surrounded by thick trees, setting up cameras in motion, sensors in hopes of catching the aliens in action. For hours, nothing happened. Just as they began to lose hope, a faint hum filled the air. Looking up, they saw a massive shadow descending from the sky. A Vorthak ship. The sight sent chills down their spines, but they forced themselves to stay calm. Hiding behind a cluster of rocks, they filmed the ship as it landed. Tall, insect-like, figures emerged, dragging unconscious humans toward the vessel. Emily clenched her fists, anger bubbling inside her. She wanted to charge forward and stop them, but Ryan held her back. "We can't take them head on," he whispered urgently. "Not yet, we need proof, to show the world what's really happening." Reluctantly, Emily nodded. They waited until the ship took off again, then moved in to examine the area. Scorch marks scarred the ground, and strange residue clung to the nearby trees. Collecting samples, they hurried back to Mia, who immediately began analyzing the findings. As days passed, the trio grew bolder. They shared their discoveries with trusted friends and neighbors, forming a small network of resistance. Word spread cautiously, reaching others who had witnessed similar events. Slowly but surely, a plan began to form. Meanwhile, high above Earth, tensions simmered within the Vorthak ranks. Kyle continued to voice his concerns to the council, but Isaac dismissed him as overly cautious. "Humans are nothing but animals," Isaac sneered during one heated debate. "We'll crush them easily once we decide to move in full force." Kale's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Deep down, he feared Isaac was wrong, and that humanity's unpredictability might prove to be their greatest weapon. The Vorthak Council convened once again, their towering forms casting long shadows across the chamber. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with unspoken doubts and growing unease. Kale Draven stood at the center of the room, his glowing eyes scanning the faces of his fellow council members. He had called this meeting to address the escalating situation on Earth. "We underestimated them," Kale began, his voice steady but firm. "Humans are not behaving like prey species. They adapt too quickly, resist too fiercely. Every action we take against them sparks a reaction we cannot predict." Commander Isaac Hale scoffed loudly, his arms crossed over his chest. "You're reading too much into this, Kale. So they've caused minor disruptions? That's expected from any species facing extinction. It doesn't mean they're a real threat." Kale turned to face Isaac, his expression unreadable. Minor disruptions? Entire sections of our ships have been sabotaged. Captives escape containment despite our best efforts, and now there are reports of coordinated resistance on the surface. These humans are not just surviving, they're fighting back. Isaac waved dismissively. Then let's stop playing games. Send in the full fleet. Bombard their cities until they surrender or die. It's what we've done countless times before. A murmur rippled through the council as others exchanged uneasy glances. While many still sided with Isaac, some were beginning to doubt his confidence. Humanity's resilience was proving harder to ignore. Kale pressed on. If we escalate recklessly, we risk losing control entirely. Humans may lack advanced technology, but they compensate with creativity and sheer willpower. Destroying their cities might unite them further. We need a new strategy, one that accounts for their unpredictability. The council debated for hours, weighing the risks and benefits of each approach. In the end, they reluctantly agreed to authorize limited escalation. More troops would be deployed to suppress human resistance, but total annihilation remained off the table for now. Back on Earth, Emily Dawson and Ryan Cole had assembled a small group of volunteers. Their makeshift militia included farmers, hunters, ex-soldiers, and even teenagers eager to protect their homes. Armed with rifles, knives, and whatever else they could scavenge, they trained tirelessly under Ryan's guidance. Remember, Ryan instructed during one training session, the key is mobility. We can't win a direct fight against these things, so we hit hard and fast, then disappear before they know what hit them. Emily nodded in agreement. She had spent her days rallying support from nearby towns, spreading awareness about the alien threat. At first, people were skeptical, dismissing her warnings as paranoia. But when she showed them footage of the Vorthak ship and the strange burn marks left behind, skepticism turned to fear, and fear turned to determination. Mia Torres worked tirelessly in her garage, reverse engineering salvaged alien tech. She had managed to create rudimentary versions of energy weapons, though they required frequent recharging and were prone to overheating. Still, they gave the humans a fighting chance against the Vorthak's superior firepower. One evening, as the group gathered around a map of the region, Emily pointed to a cluster of red dots marking recent abduction sites. This valley here, she said, tapping the map, is where we'll make our stand. If we can ambush them when they come to take more people, we might be able to send a message. Earth isn't theirs for the taking. Ryan studied the map carefully. It's risky. If we fail, they'll retaliate harder than ever. But if we succeed, he trailed off, a faint smile tugging at his lips. We might buy ourselves enough time to figure out how to fight back properly. The group dispersed to prepare, checking weapons and reviewing plans. As night fell, they moved into position, hiding among the trees and rocks surrounding the valley. Hours passed in tense silence, the only sounds coming from the rustling leaves and distant calls of nocturnal animals. Finally, just after midnight, a low hum filled the air. Looking up, Emily saw the unmistakable silhouette of a Vorthak ship descending from the sky. Her heart raced as the vessel landed gently in the clearing below, its sleek surface gleaming under the moonlight. Tall insect-like figures emerged, dragging terrified humans toward the ship. Ryan raised a hand, signaling the group to hold their positions. When the aliens were fully occupied with loading their captives, he gave the signal to attack. A hail of bullets and homemade explosives erupted from the shadows, catching the Vorthak by surprise. Chaos ensued as the creatures scrambled to defend themselves, their weapons firing bursts of searing energy. Emily charged forward, her rifle aimed squarely at one of the aliens. The creature stumbled backward, its glowing eyes wide with shock. Before it could recover, Ryan appeared beside her, driving a knife into its chest. The alien collapsed, twitching briefly before going still. The humans fought with everything they had, their desperation fueling their strength. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, they managed to drive the Vorthak back onto their ship. As the vessel lifted off, retreating into the sky, cheers erupted from the group, but the victory was bittersweet. Several of their own lay injured, or dead, and they knew the Vorthak would return with greater force. Still, for the first time since the invasion began, hope flickered in their hearts. High above Earth, Ava Carter watched the events unfold with growing dread. She had been monitoring the human resistance from orbit, feeding data to the hegemony's command center. What she saw terrified her, not because of the humans' success, but because of their resolve. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, they refused to give up. That night, Ava made a decision. Sneaking into the communications room, she transmitted a coded message to Earth. It contained coordinates for a hidden Vorthak outpost near the town where Emily and her group operated. If humanity wanted to strike back, this was their chance. When Emily received the message, she stared at it in disbelief. "Is this real?" she asked Mia, who was analyzing the transmission. "It checks out," Mia replied, her voice tinged with awe. "Whoever sent this knows what they're doing. They're helping us." Ryan clenched his fists, determination burning in his eyes. "Then we move tonight. We hit them hard and fast, just like before. But this time, we don't stop until the outpost is destroyed." As the group prepared for their next mission, Ava waited anxiously aboard the Vorthak ship. She knew betrayal carried a heavy price, but she couldn't stand idly by while her people committed atrocities. Humanity deserved a chance to survive, and perhaps she thought they might teach the hegemony a lesson about underestimating others. The battle for Earth was far from over, but something had shifted. The humans, once dismissed as weak and insignificant, were proving themselves to be formidable opponents. Their resilience and ingenuity forced the Vorthak to rethink their strategy, sowing seeds of doubt within the ranks of the hegemony. Cale observed the unfolding events with quiet satisfaction. Perhaps, he mused, humanity's unpredictability was exactly what the universe needed to challenge the Vorthak's dominance. For the first time in centuries, the Council found itself facing a foe it couldn't easily classify or conquer, and, deep down, Cale wondered if that unpredictability might one day lead to something greater, a reckoning that could change the balance of power across the stars. The night was cold and quiet, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. Emily Dawson stood at the edge of the forest, her breath visible in the frosty air. Behind her, Ryan Cole and the rest of their group waited silently, gripping weapons tightly. They had spent hours preparing for this moment, studying maps and planning every step carefully. Now they were ready to strike at the Vorthak outpost Ava's message had revealed. "This is it," Ryan whispered, his voice barely audible. "Once we move, there's no turning back." Emily nodded, her jaw set with determination. She glanced at the others, farmers, hunters, teenagers, all ordinary people who had come together to fight for something greater than themselves. Their faces were tense but resolute. Whatever happened tonight, they would face it together. Ryan gave the yaw signal, and the group moved forward, sticking close to the shadows. The outpost lay a few miles ahead, hidden deep within a rocky canyon. Ava's intel had been precise. The location, the defenses, even the patrol patterns of the Vorthak guards. It was clear she had risked everything to help them. As they approached, Emily could see the faint glow of energy barriers surrounding the base. Towering structures made of smooth metallic material rose from the ground, their surfaces shimmering under the moonlight. Strange symbols etched into the walls pulsed faintly, as if alive. The sight sent a chill down her spine, but she pushed the fear aside. Fear wouldn't save them now. "Stay low," Ryan instructed, crouching behind a boulder. "We need to disable those barriers first." Mia Torres stepped forward, carrying a backpack filled with makeshift gadgets. She knelt near the barrier, her hands trembling slightly as she attached wires to a small device she had built. "This should overload the system," she muttered, adjusting dials on the machine, "but I can't guarantee how long it'll stay down." "Do your best," Emily said softly. "We're counting on you." Mia nodded and flipped the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a loud crackle, the barrier flickered and vanished. The group wasted no time rushing through the opening before the Vorthak could react. Inside the outpost, chaos erupted almost immediately. The humans split into teams, each assigned a specific task. Some targeted the power generators, while others focused on sabotaging communication arrays. Emily led a group toward the main building where they hoped to find valuable information, or prisoners. The Vorthak guards responded quickly, their movements swift and precise. Energy blasts sizzled through the air, forcing the humans to take cover behind crates and debris. Despite being outnumbered, the resistance fighters fought fiercely, using their knowledge of the terrain to outmaneuver the aliens. Ryan ducked behind a pillar, reloading his rifle. "Keep moving," he shouted. "Don't let them pin us down." Nearby, a young man named Jake fired a homemade explosive at a group of advancing Vorthak soldiers. The blast sent them sprawling, giving the humans precious seconds to regroup. Jake grinned triumphantly, but his smile faded when one of the fallen creatures stirred and raised its weapon. Before it could fire, a farmer named Ben tackled it to the ground, finishing it off with a well-placed strike. Emily reached the main building and kicked open the door, her gun raised. Inside, rows of cells lined the walls, each containing terrified humans. Many looked malnourished and injured, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "It's okay," Emily called out, her voice calm but firm. "We're here to get you out." One prisoner, an elderly woman, hesitated before speaking. "You're human?" "Yes," Emily replied, unlocking the cell with a key she found on a nearby table. "Come on. We don't have much time." The freed captives followed her outside, where Mia and others worked to guide them to safety. Meanwhile, Ryan and his team planted explosives throughout the facility, ensuring that nothing usable would remain for the Vorthak. As they prepared to retreat, a deafening roar echoed through the canyon. Everyone froze, turning toward the source of the sound. A massive Vorthak warship descended from the sky, its engines kicking up clouds of dust and debris. Dozens of reinforcements poured out, their weapons trained on the humans. "We're not going to make it," Mia gasped, clutching her backpack tightly. "Yes, we are," Ryan snapped. "Stick to the plan. Move." The group scattered, splitting into smaller units to confuse the enemy. Emily stayed behind to cover their escape, firing wildly at the advancing Vorthak. Her heart pounded as she realized she might not survive the night. But if her sacrifice meant the others could live, it would be worth it. Just as the Vorthak closed in, a sudden explosion rocked the outpost. Flames engulfed the central structure, sending shards of metal flying in all directions. The humans seized the opportunity, sprinting toward the forest where their vehicles awaited. Ryan grabbed Emily's arm, pulling her along as they ran. When they finally reached the trucks, the group piled in and sped away, leaving the burning ruins behind. No one spoke as they drove, the weight of what they had done and lost hanging heavily in the air. Several members of their group hadn't made it out alive, including Ben, whose bravery had saved countless lives. High above Earth, Cale Draven watched the aftermath of the attack unfold on the hegemony's monitors. The destruction of the outpost was a blow to the Vorthak's operations, but what troubled him most was the footage of the humans' tactics. Their coordination, resourcefulness, and willingness to sacrifice themselves for the greater good were unlike anything he had seen before. "They're learning faster than we anticipated," Cale said aloud, addressing Commander Isaac Hale, who stood nearby. "Every encounter makes them stronger. If we continue this way, we risk creating an enemy we cannot defeat." Isaac scowled, his patience wearing thin. "Enough of your doubts, Cale. Humans are still primitive compared to us. Another wave of attacks will crush them completely." Kyle shook his head. "And if it doesn't? What then? Shall we burn the entire planet just to prove our superiority?" Before Isaac could respond, an alarm blared throughout the ship. A holographic display lit up, showing a rogue transmission originating from within their ranks. Ava Carter's face appeared on the screen, her expression defiant. "I've betrayed you," she declared, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Humanity deserves a chance to survive. If you continue this invasion, you'll regret it." The council erupted into chaos, shouting demands for Ava's immediate capture. Kyle, however, remained silent, his thoughts racing. Ava's actions confirmed what he had suspected all along. Humanity was not just a threat, it was a mirror reflecting the flaws in the hegemony's rigid system. Back on Earth, the Resistance celebrated their victory cautiously. While the destruction of the outpost boosted morale, they knew the Vorthak wouldn't give up easily. News of the attack spread quickly, inspiring other towns and cities to join the fight. For the first time, humanity began to unite, not as individuals or nations, but as a species determined to protect its home. Emily sat by a campfire staring into the flames. Ryan joined her, handing her a cup of coffee. Neither spoke for a long time, the silence between them heavy with unspoken emotions. "We won today," Ryan said finally. "But tomorrow will be harder." Emily nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Then we'll fight harder too. As long as we stand together, they can't break us." In the distance, the stars twinkled faintly, unaware of the storm brewing below. Humanity had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Vorthak Council convened in an emergency session, their towering forms casting long shadows across the chamber. The destruction of the outpost had sent shockwaves through the hegemony, forcing even the most stubborn members to reconsider their strategy. Commander Isaac Hale paced angrily, his fists clenched as he glared at the holographic display showing images of the ruined facility. "This is unacceptable," Isaac growled, slamming his hand on the table. "A single group of primitives managed to destroy one of our outposts. How did this happen?" Cale Draven stood calmly, his glowing eyes betraying no emotion. "Because we underestimated them. Humans are not like any species we've encountered before. They adapt, they learn, and they fight back with everything they have." Isaac turned to face Cale, his voice dripping with frustration. "Adaptation doesn't matter if we crush them completely. If they won't surrender, then we exterminate them. It's simple." Cale shook his head slowly. "Extermination isn't so simple when the enemy refuses to stay defeated. Every attack makes them stronger, more united. Destroying Earth would only prove that humanity was right to resist us." The council erupted into heated debate, voices overlapping as arguments bounced back and forth. Some sided with Isaac, calling for total annihilation. Others listened to Cale's warnings, recognizing the growing complexity of the situation. For the first time in centuries, the hegemony found itself divided, unsure of how to proceed. Finally, a decision was reached. A larger fleet would be deployed to Earth, armed with advanced weaponry designed to overwhelm human resistance. But there was a catch. The Council ordered strict containment protocols. No unnecessary destruction. Earth's resources were too valuable to waste. If humanity could not be subdued, then they would isolate the planet entirely, cutting it off from the rest of the galaxy. As the meeting adjourned, Cale lingered behind, staring thoughtfully at the hologram of Earth. He couldn't shake the feeling that this conflict would change the hegemony forever. Humanity's defiance had planted seeds of doubt in even the most steadfast minds. Perhaps, he mused, the real threat wasn't humans. It was the possibility that their resilience might inspire others to rise against the hegemony. Back on Earth, Emily Dawson and her group worked tirelessly to prepare for the inevitable retaliation. News of the outpost's destruction had spread far and wide, drawing volunteers from neighboring towns and cities. Farmers brought tractors and tools. Hunters donated rifles and ammunition, and tech-savvy individuals like Mia Torres continued reverse engineering alien technology. "We're running out of time," Ryan Cole said during one planning session. His voice carried a note of urgency as he pointed to a map covered in red markers. "They'll hit us harder next time. We need to fortify our positions and make sure everyone knows what's coming." Emily nodded, her expression grim. "We also need to warn people outside our area. If the Vorthak target other regions, they'll be caught off guard." Mia raised her hand hesitantly. "I've been working on something that might help." She held up a small device resembling a walkie-talkie. "It's a communication jammer. Not perfect, but it should disrupt their signals enough to give us an edge." Ryan smiled faintly. Good work, Mia. Let's get these distributed as fast as possible. The group split into teams, traveling to nearby communities to share information and supplies. Wherever they went, they found determination mixed with fear. People wanted to fight, but many doubted they could win against such overwhelming odds. Emily and Ryan did their best to reassure them, emphasizing the importance of unity and preparation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily stood atop a hill overlooking the makeshift camp where their group had set up operations. Smoke curled lazily from cooking fires, and the distant hum of generators filled the air. Children played near the tents while adults sharpened weapons or practiced combat drills. Despite the looming threat, there was a sense of purpose, a shared belief that survival was worth fighting for. Ryan joined her, handing her a cup of coffee. Thinking about tomorrow? Emily took a sip, letting the warmth seep into her hands. Yeah, wondering if we've done enough. You've done more than anyone expected, Ryan replied softly. When this started, we were just trying to survive. Now look at us. We've got people ready to stand together no matter what happens. Emily sighed, her gaze fixed on the horizon. I hope it's enough. High above Earth, Ava Carter hid in the shadows of the Vorthak ship, her heart pounding with every step she took. Betraying the hegemony had been a gamble, and now she was paying the price. Security patrols roamed the corridors, searching for her relentlessly. She knew it was only a matter of time before they found her, but until then, she intended to cause as much damage as possible. Using stolen access codes, Ava infiltrated the MOM ship's mainframe, planting viruses designed to corrupt critical systems. She uploaded classified data to Earth, hoping it would aid the resistance. As she worked, memories of her earlier missions flooded her mind, missions where she had blindly followed orders without questioning their morality. Those days were over. Whatever happened to her now, she had chosen a side. Her actions didn't go unnoticed. An alarm blared throughout the ship, and heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Ava quickly erased her tracks and slipped into a ventilation duct, crawling silently as soldiers stormed past. She emerged in a storage bay where she rigged explosives to disable the ship's engines. By the time the Vorthak realized what she had done, it would be too late. Ava's sabotage caused chaos aboard the fleet, delaying their deployment to Earth. While the Vorthak scrambled to repair the damage, humanity gained precious time to strengthen its defenses. News of Ava's betrayal reached the Council, sparking outrage and paranoia. Trust within the hegemony began to crumble, further complicating their efforts to subdue Earth. In the weeks that followed, the Resistance launched guerrilla-style attacks against smaller Vorthak units scattered across the globe. Using improvised traps and tactics honed from months of practice, they inflicted significant losses on the invaders. Each victory, no matter how small, boosted morale and inspired others to join the fight. One particularly daring operation targeted a supply convoy transporting vital resources to the Vorthak fleet. Emily led the mission, guiding her team through dense forests and rocky terrain to ambush the vehicles. When the convoy entered a narrow pass, Jake triggered a landslide, blocking their escape route. The humans struck swiftly, disabling the trucks and stealing crates of alien equipment. As they retreated, Emily noticed something unusual inside one of the crates: blueprints for a massive weapon being constructed in orbit. Her stomach churned as she realized the implications. If the Vorthak completed it, Earth would face devastation unlike anything seen before. We need to stop them, Emily said later, spreading the blueprints across a table. If they finish this weapon, we're finished. Ryan studied the designs carefully. This is bad, really bad. But there's a chance. Look here. He pointed to a section marked with intricate symbols. If we can sabotage this part, the whole thing collapses. Mia leaned forward, her brow furrowed. That's the core reactor. Take it out and the weapon becomes useless. Emily straightened, her resolve hardening. Then that's what we do, no matter the cost. The group spent days preparing for the assault, gathering intelligence and assembling a team of volunteers willing to risk everything. Their plan was risky, boarding a heavily guarded orbital platform, but failure wasn't an option. Humanity's survival depended on it. On the night of the mission, the Resistance launched a stolen Vorthak shuttle, disguising themselves as part of the fleet. Nerves ran high as they approached the platform, its massive structure looming ominously against the stars. Inside, the air buzzed with activity as engineers worked tirelessly to complete the weapon. Splitting into teams, the humans moved quickly, avoiding detection as they made their way to the reactor chamber. Along the way, they encountered several patrols, relying on stealth and quick reflexes to neutralize threats without raising alarms. Reaching the reactor, Mia connected her device to the control panel, her fingers flying over the keys. "Almost. There," she muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. "Just a few more seconds." Suddenly, a loud alarm pierced the silence. The Vorthak had discovered their presence. Soldiers flooded the corridor, forcing the humans to defend their position. Ryan and Jake fired wildly, holding the line as Mia worked frantically to disable the reactor. "Done!" Mia shouted, pulling the trigger mechanism. "Let's go." The group sprinted toward the exit, explosions rocking the platform behind them. Flames engulfed the chamber, sending shockwaves rippling through the structure. As they reached the shuttle, Emily glanced back at the burning wreckage, her chest heaving with exhaustion. "It's over," she whispered, though she knew the war was far from finished. The destruction of the orbital weapon marked a turning point in the conflict. The Vorthak fleet retreated temporarily, regrouping to assess the damage. On Earth, humanity celebrated cautiously, knowing the fight was far from over. But for the first time, they believed they could win, not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they refused to give up. Kale watched the events unfold from his quarters, his thoughts swirling with uncertainty. Humanity had proven itself unpredictable, resilient, and dangerous. And perhaps, he realized, the Vorthak Council sat in stunned silence as reports poured in from Earth. The destruction of their orbital weapon had been a devastating blow, one that forced them to reconsider their entire strategy. Commander Isaac Hale paced furiously across the chamber, his frustration boiling over. "This is unacceptable," he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "We are the hegemony. We do not retreat. We conquer." Kale Draven watched him calmly, his glowing eyes steady. "Retreat may be our only option," he said quietly. "Humans have shown they will fight to the last breath. If we continue this invasion, we risk losing more than just resources. We risk undermining the very foundation of the hegemony." Isaac turned to glare at Kale, his voice rising. "You would let them win, after everything we've done?" "It's not about winning or losing," Kale replied. "It's about survival. Humanity is unlike any species we've encountered before. They adapt, they unite, and they refuse to submit. Destroying Earth would require total annihilation, and even then I doubt it would break their spirit." The council erupted into heated debate, voices overlapping as arguments raged. Some sided with Isaac, demanding retribution. Others listened to Kale, recognizing the futility of further aggression. For hours they argued, until finally a decision was reached. The fleet would withdraw from Earth, leaving humanity isolated but intact. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but the alternative, endless conflict with an unpredictable enemy, was too dangerous to contemplate. As the meeting adjourned, Kale remained seated, staring thoughtfully at the holographic image of Earth. He couldn't shake the feeling that this decision marked the beginning of something far greater, a shift in the balance of power across the galaxy. Humanity had proven itself resilient, resourceful, and unyielding. And perhaps, Kale mused, those qualities were exactly what the universe needed to challenge the hegemony's dominance. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted as news of the Vorthak withdrawal spread. Emily Dawson stood atop a hill overlooking the makeshift camp, her heart swelling with pride as she watched people cheer and embrace. Fires burned brightly in the distance, illuminating faces filled with relief and hope. After months of fear and uncertainty, humanity had emerged victorious, or so it seemed. Ryan joined her, handing her a cup of coffee. "Feels good, doesn't it?" he asked, his voice tinged with cautious optimism. Emily nodded, though her expression remained thoughtful. "For now, yeah. But I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. The Vorthak didn't come all this way just to leave empty-handed." Ryan sighed, his gaze drifting toward the stars. "You're probably right. This might just be the calm before the storm." Mia approached them, clutching a tablet filled with data. "I've been analyzing the intel we recovered from the orbital platform. There's something you need to see." She handed the tablet to Emily, who scanned the information quickly. Her brow furrowed as she read. "They were planning more than just the weapon," she said grimly. "There are mentions of reinforcements, bigger ships, stronger weapons. It looks like they were preparing for a full-scale assault." Ryan frowned. "So why did they back off?" "Maybe they realized we're tougher than they thought," Mia suggested. "Or maybe they're regrouping. Either way, we need to stay ready." Emily straightened, her jaw set with determination. "Then that's what we'll do. No matter what comes next, we'll face it together." In the weeks that followed, humanity began rebuilding. Towns and cities devastated by the invasion slowly came back to life, their residents working tirelessly to restore what had been lost. Farmers planted new crops, builders repaired damaged homes, and engineers studied salvaged alien technology, searching for ways to improve Earth's defenses. Emily and Ryan traveled across the country, rallying support and spreading awareness. Their message was simple. The war wasn't over, but humanity had proven it could stand against even the most powerful foes. People listened, inspired by their courage and leadership. Militias formed in every region, training and preparing for whatever the future might hold. Mia continued her work in her garage-turned-lab, reverse engineering alien tech and developing new tools to aid the resistance. She managed to create prototypes of energy shields and advanced communication devices, giving humans a technological edge they hadn't possessed before. Though her inventions were crude compared to the Vorthak's sleek designs, they worked, and that was enough. Ava Carter, meanwhile, remained in hiding aboard the Vorthak fleet. Her sabotage had bought humanity valuable time, but she knew the hegemony wouldn't forgive her betrayal. Security patrols searched relentlessly for her, forcing her to move constantly. Despite the danger, Ava refused to give up. She continued, feeding information to Earth, determined to help the humans prepare for the inevitable return of the Vorthak. One evening, as Ava hacked into the ship's mainframe, she stumbled upon classified files detailing the Council's plans. Her blood ran cold as she read the documents. The Vorthak weren't just regrouping. They were building alliances with other alien species, recruiting mercenaries and warships to bolster their forces. When they returned to Earth, it would be with overwhelming numbers. Ava transmitted the files to Earth immediately, knowing the humans needed to know what was coming. As she finished, footsteps echoed down the corridor outside. Realizing she'd been discovered, Ava grabbed a stolen energy pistol and prepared to make her final stand. When the soldiers burst into the room, Ava fired without hesitation, taking down two before the third disarmed her. As they dragged her away, she smiled faintly, knowing her sacrifice had given humanity a fighting chance. On Earth, Emily and her group reviewed Ava's transmission, their faces grim. The scale of the threat was staggering, but instead of despair, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. If the Vorthak wanted a fight, they would get one, but this time humanity would be ready. "We need to unify," Emily said during a meeting with leaders from across the globe. "Every nation, every community, every person. We can't afford to divide ourselves anymore." The others nodded in agreement. For the first time in history, humanity truly came together, setting aside differences in pursuit of a common goal. Armies trained alongside civilians, scientists collaborated with farmers, and children learned survival skills alongside traditional education. Earth transformed into a planet united, not by fear, but by hope. As preparations continued, Emily found herself reflecting on how much had changed. What started as a desperate struggle for survival had become something greater, a testament to humanity's strength, creativity, and resilience. They had faced the unknown and refused to back down. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would meet them head-on. High above Earth, Cale Draven stood alone on the observation deck of the flagship, gazing at the distant blue planet. Images of humanity's defiance played endlessly in his mind. Their ingenuity, their unity, their refusal to yield. He had spent centuries believing the hegemony's dominance was absolute, but now he saw cracks forming in its foundation. Perhaps, he thought, the real lesson wasn't about conquest or control. Perhaps it was about understanding that no species, not even the mighty Vorthak, was invincible. Humanity had proven that chaos and unpredictability could be strengths, not weaknesses. And in doing so, they had challenged the very essence of what it meant to rule. As the fleet prepared to leave Earth's orbit, Kyle whispered softly to himself, "This isn't the end. It's only the beginning." Far below, on the surface of the planet, Emily Dawson raised her eyes to the stars. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. Humanity would never stop fighting for their home, for their freedom, and for the chance to shape their own destiny.